Interest rates are near its peak. The Fed is shredding money. The US government is squandering it. You've heard all of that before. But how does this play out? How does this end? And how does this impact your wealth and your finances? Let me run you quickly through the setup here. And then I'll actually give you 3, maybe even 4 actionable steps on a glorious sunny day in England. That's what the Brits tell me. So the US fiscal government idiocy has basically gone only one way. They are up spending 12% year on year. Absolute bloody madness. They're spending as if we were in the middle of some cataclysmic disaster, which I don't think we are. Now, if you look at some of these charts here, like the US fiscal spending, and that's without interest. So it's going up in a straight line up, not because we're spending a lot on interest rate. I say we, I mean you, Americans, but because certain people want to get re-elected. I think that's got more to do with it. And the Muppets at the Treasury are doing one thing, and that is they're issuing debt. Lots of it. Winston, I believe that you deserve financial education, and therefore we're giving away our entire trading plan, aren't we, Winston? And that means you get to learn our entire strategy for free. Plus, we'll do a spot of sniffing out some real life trades and putting them on together. All you got to do is sign up for it. felixfriends.org/webinar. It is free at where, Winston? felixfriends.org/webinar, indeed. The Muppets at the Treasury are doing one thing, and that is they're issuing debt. Lots of it. This July was the second highest monthly debt issuance by the US government ever, which is fairly staggering, isn't it? And what are they doing? Well, they should be issuing short-term debt, right? Which would be, okay, at a high interest rate, 5% or so. But once interest rates come down, they would then have the ability to reduce that, roll it over into lower interest rates. So are they doing that? Have a look at this. No, they're not. They're issuing plenty of long-term debt. That long-term debt is going to saddle the US with 5% plus interest rates for years and years and years to come. I don't know what to say about that, really. Just idiots. But if you're thinking, well, what does it matter? Debt is not that expensive, and we can always pay it off. We can print some more money. Well, so far, US interest debt this year is exceeding the defense budget. Little squirrel down here. You see him? There he is, one of Winston's friends. Winston is playing with his pack somewhere. I'm trying to find him. And I'll hear him. And let's go back to the story, shall we? So the US debt level isn't just the actual staggering levels. So then we get to our actionable steps for you and me, what impacts us. But it compounds at 10% a year. So it becomes 10% a year more just by doing nothing. It's very much the opposite of you and me investing and benefiting from being smart long-term investors. The US government, if they don't do anything, debt just keeps rising by 10%. So the Fed at the same time is no longer buying government debt. And the Fed at one point was buying half of the US government debt. You might be thinking, well, why does that matter? There are a lot of buyers. The US government can pay less in interest. Demand and supply. So who's buying it? Other central banks? Nope. They're all doing the same thing, pretty much. They're all shredding money, more or less. They're not buying it. Only 20% of US debt is now government debt is bought by central banks. So who's buying all this stuff? Well, it's sort of the funds, the pension funds, the retail, the Japanese, and that's pretty much it. And that means yields are much higher than you'd like them to be. And that's why you're seeing the yield curve looking the way it does. So the Fed has actually reduced its treasury holdings by like 17%. And at one point, something's going to break here. And I say this with a smile. The Fed essentially has two choices. They can either cut their rates, because otherwise they'll bankrupt the US, or they can keep their rates higher for longer. And I tell you why they might want to do that. Because inflation tends to come in waves. Look at this chart here from the 1970s, where inflation went up a lot. They raised interest rates, it came down a lot. They lowered interest rates, inflation went up a lot. And part of the reason is government spending. So a lot of government spending means more inflation. And because the idiots in Washington didn't get the memo on this, that's exactly what they're doing. So the second choice is the Fed starts excuse me, a little bit of hay fever here in the park, the Fed starts quantitative easing again, which is money printing, essentially, which means the Fed starts to buy government debt. And that makes it more affordable for the US government to issue debt. And it's kind of the Japan model. So government can pile up as much debt as humanly possible. No one really cares because there is always a buyer, your friendly central banker whom you have appointed. And that seems to be probably the more realistic way, which way we're going to go. But what does that mean? Does it still cause inflation? Yes, to an extent, it still causes some inflation, although in Japan's case, they're not really getting anywhere with that, but that's a whole different story. So what's the impact here? Well, think through COVID a little bit while we sit on a lovely old tree. During COVID, billionaires' assets went up 70%. Corporate profits went up 50%. Wages went up 15% less than inflation. If you have a salary, your wages have been falling for 3 years in a row. And I'm not one of these socialists saying, people shouldn't make a lot of money, but we essentially have a direct wealth transfer here from your salaried employee, your middle classes, to those who have a lot of assets. And that's why we get more billionaires, and that's why billionaires become a lot richer. So with quantitative easing, what will happen again is that assets become more valuable because there's more money about. More money chases more assets, therefore it drives the prices up of assets, exactly like the COVID bubble. So what does that mean for you? Well, there are 3 steps, maybe 4 steps that I'd recommend, highly recommend. I might even say it's advice. 1, invest in stocks with high gross margins. And you can look that up. You can ask ChatGPT. Actually, don't ask ChatGPT. You can ask Google Bard. Or look on any of our screeners or scanners. And, Microsoft has a, 60-70% gross margin. Visa, MasterCard have 80% plus. Those kind of businesses that have high gross margins essentially have a high pricing power. They're able to raise their prices. Pepsi put their prices up 17% this year. They blamed inflation. It boosted profits. So they actually quite like this scenario. That's number 1. Number 2, buy your home. Number 3, pay it off really quickly. Not in 20 years, not in 15 years, not in 10 years, but at a breakneck speed that you never thought was humanly possible, because debt is going to remain more expensive. And if you have debt, this is a problem. Now, inflation in a sense is good for debt, but not if interest rate levels are around by the inflation rate. It doesn't really benefit from you. So how do you do that? You might be thinking, Felix, I can't do that. My income is such and such, and I've got expenses and got 3 cars and 9 golden retrievers, and I understand they eat a lot. But what you need is another income stream. And then you're thinking, well, I'm busy and I'll look into it and I'll check it out and all of that. And I get that. I totally understand that. I'm not saying this to be irritating. I've been there. I've been very busy. I've worked 16 hours a day and I had no possible way of thinking about anything. But the little bits of time I did have, I didn't turn the TV on. I didn't drink a bottle of wine. I just sat down and I figured out, how do I get out of this? Because this is hell. This is jail. This is slavery. All very, very inappropriate terms to use. I appreciate that, but that is essentially what it is, right? If you're a salaried employee, with very few exceptions, you're a wage slave. You don't really want to be there. You don't get to decide when your time's off. You don't get to decide when you go on holiday. You don't get to decide how many days you have off, and you have to always ask for permission. That's not freedom. That's not living. So you need an extra income stream. There are millions of ways of doing that. Now, I like to trade. We're running a free seminar literally tomorrow on Tuesday, 11 a.m. Come and join me for that. I'll give you my entire trading strategy. It's free. Just join it. Love it. And you learn a lot, I think. Secondly, if you have a little bit of time, of course, you can be a freelancer. It's amazing. And people say, oh, I don't want to be a freelancer. Well, I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a quarter probably on freelancers, and they are amazing people, and some have very, very high salaries or high hourly rates or high project rates, and that makes a lot of sense because they're great people, and I only need them for 10 hours a week or 10 hours a month or whatever it is, and I don't want to employ them full time because that comes with a whole load of headaches. So if you're thinking that freelancing is for low-end jobs, typists, no, that's not the case. So that's one thing to do. Appwork.com is amazing for that. I think if I was going to hone in on like 3 things, one would be copywriting. That's a huge value add skill. And with ChatGPT, that's become a heck of a lot easier for people to do. Graphic design, if you know how to use AI, nobody really knows how to do it. If you can figure out how to do it, it's not difficult. You can learn it online. It's all free. Just ask the AI. That's an enormously beneficial thing. Obviously, as a YouTuber, if you are a video editor, again, that's a hugely in-demand skill. And that's going to be more and more and more and more, just because video is such a wonderful medium to talk to people and reach people. The same for brands and information and entertainment and everything else. So those will probably be the ones that I hone in on. But if you have a skill already, if you're in a job, if you're in an industry, you might be able to do that part-time on a contract basis or whatever to boost yourself up. And then I'd pile up some cash and I'd start trading. And I always say the more income streams you have, the freer you are. It means you can sit here in the park on a Tuesday and rant at some unsuspecting strangers. And I truly appreciate you watching this far. So come and join me tomorrow. Learn like what I do for passive income, or, nothing is really, the passive income thing is a little bit of a myth. And I think we should be honest about that. So I still spend a couple of hours a week setting up trades, but it's like 3 or something. Are there things that are purely passive? Owning stocks, yes, but you need to own a lot of stocks for that to really make you really, really free. Owning property and all those things are all great and wonderful, but they're not 100% pure passive, right? You have to do, like I had a call today and we need to replace a water heater or something. But all I do is I have a VA who's amazing, who's been doing it for years for me. I should forward her a WhatsApp message, she handles it, she books the contractor, it's all done. It took me literally less than 10 seconds to approve budget A over budget B. And I think you can set it up like that, and then you have time freedom, and then you can think. You can come up with better business, you can come up with better ideas, you can enjoy your life. And that's really what this is all about. So those bastards in government, their intention, in my view, is get the money to their donors, get the profits up in the companies that give them money. And you might call it the Great Reset or whatever you want to call it. But if you think that there is no intention behind redistribution of wealth from the masses to the few, then I envy your innocence. I don't share it. I think this is an intentional program. This is going to get a lot worse over time. And I think there'll also be other COVID-like catastrophes. It might be food, it might be water, whatever they come up with. And they'll use it to, again, boost those who are close to power, and they'll take it from those who are not. And politicians are never going to fix it. If you think about it, as a politician, what you actually want is you want people who are fairly desperate. You can motivate them more easily to vote for you. So that's a bit of cynicism over here from me. Somebody please putting in the comments Diogenes, which is a Greek chap. He was sort of the founder of cynicism. And I don't think I'm a hugely cynical guy, but I think you just have to look at it like, I always think, follow the money. Follow the money trail, and you get a pretty good idea why things are happening in the world. And if you can make money at the same time when following the money trail, it actually becomes fun, and it no longer is this oh my god, the world's going to end, everything is going to, you know what, it's terrible. It isn't. There is an opportunity in it. It's just most people will watch this and they won't take any action. They'll just go and they won't do anything about it. And the very, very few who do will be the ones who keep rising to the top and have a great life. And that's the ultimate explainer for wealth disparity. There are, of course, certain groups who haven't got access to all sorts and education and background and all that kind of stuff. But information is freely available, more or less. You can find people better than ever before. So take advantage of it. That's what I got to say. Thanks very much for watching. See you on the next one.